7 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for coming out, and I have a small prepared statement I'm going to read off. I stand before you today. I'm humbled and honored by the trust that has been placed in me by the Travelers Rest Historical Society. I extend my gratitude to the board and each member for their vote of confidence. It is with a deep sense of responsibility that I accept this role, and I'm committed to upholding the legacy of those who have served before me. As we embark on this journey together, I pledge to maintain the honor and dignity that my predecessors have brought to this office. Their commitment to preserving and sharing the history of Northern Greenville County is a beacon that guides us. We are entrusted with the important task of carrying this torch forward, and I'm eager to contribute to the rich narrative of our community. Our society is a tapestry woven by the dedication of its members, and I firmly believe that it is the collective effort of each and every one of us that keeps the organization vibrant and thriving. The Travelers Rest Historical Society is not merely an institution, it's a shared property of all the members. And it is your unwavering support that sustains our vitality and viability. If anyone here tonight wishes to become further involved, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us. Your ideas, enthusiasm, and support are invaluable. And together we can continue to make history come alive. I extend my gratitude to each one of you for supporting us with your presence tonight, and I'm eager to kick off this new chapter and look forward to an informative presentation that reflects the spirit of our society. Let us continue to weave the story of our community together and create a legacy that future generations will cherish. Thank you. I want to give a brief update on Spring Park Inn. We've got some good things going there, and momentum is continuing, so we hope to have some more updates in the next meeting. Want to do some general housekeeping. We've got the treasurer's report for February. This is for the 2023 year. The Travelers Rest Historical Society achieved a balanced budget for the year ending December 2023. And thanks to the fall campaign, mail membership, and good sales in the museum shop and online, the expenses have come in under budget. The board has approved the 2024 budget, and we look forward to another strong year for the Historical Society. Please feel free to renew your membership if you have yet to, and there are forms at the door. I want to thank Linda for heading up memberships and doing such a great job with that. I would like to now bring Rosemary up for some introductions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mark Garrison, our president for this year and next year. Thank you. I just wanted to introduce two special people that you may not know. Gracie Moore is our Furman intern. She's a student at Furman. Stand up again. Stand up yeah, from Furman University. She's studying history, and she's helping the Historical Society during the spring semester and doing a great job. We're very glad to have her there. And then Deanna Houston, is a member now, and she is now scheduling the docents for the museum, and she's doing a great job there. And she is also appreciates the enthusiasm of the docents. And if anyone does not know about that or wants to help or find out more about being a docent or a guide at the museum, you may talk to Deanna after the meeting. Okay, and now Robert Boggs will introduce our program tonight.
The genesis of this program actually comes from Doc Bishop, who when asked me sometime, he said, "Would you consider doing a program about Tigerville?" And I said, "Well, no." No, anything. Now, it was a natural question. I taught history there for 22 years, so I should know something about it, but I just knew when Chicken Day was at the cafeteria. I'll give you an actual incident that happened. There was a lecture I was giving that I had ordered some special things in, and I was very anxious that the materials would come in. They didn't. 2 days later, they came in, and the secretary came to my office with things and the bill of lading or whatever, and said, I said, look at that, no wonder it didn't get here. Chinkapin Road. They sent it somewhere called Chinkapin Road. And I said, where could that be? She said, I wrote that in. That's where we are, where you are right now. And UPS will not deliver without a physical address. I had put P.O. Box 1892, which is the only other thing I knew about North Greenville University, which was that it was founded in 1892. Anyway, you have a much more able presenter today. Meredith Icegrowl Hammond is, she does our newsletter, she does all kinds of wonderful things for us, and she lives on the premises of what was once the Vermiculite mine, which I'm guessing, since Travis Rest is basically a suburb of Tigerville, you may have known about it at one time. A lot of people were employed by it, but she actually lives on, she and her husband live on the premises and have prepared this. She did it in combination with Gigi Epley, who is not feeling well, so she cannot be with us today. So I especially want to thank you for coming, and otherwise you would have heard me dither. I just did. But in any event, I hope you will join me in welcoming Meredith Icegrowl Hammond.
Thank you so much, Robert. Hi, everybody. I am really honored to be here today to talk about my passion, which is the Vermiculite mine that existed in Tigerville back from the 1930s through the 1940s. And so what I also brought today, and I'd love for you all, when you get a chance after I talk, please come up and take a look at any of the things that I brought, because they're really special to me, and I'd love to be able to talk even further in depth about them. But here we go. So vermiculite was actually first described in 1824, and they took the name from vermicular, which is Latin for to breed worms, which I thought was so fascinating when I heard that, and already I was like, no thank you. But the name was due to its property of being able to expand into accordion-like forms when it was heated. And so it really wasn't utilized much commercially before 1925. And when it was used, after that, when people started to understand the properties and what it could do for them, it became very popular for things like insulation. They used it on movie sets to recreate sandstorms, and it even carried poison in insecticides. So it really had a multitude of uses. And so when you look at it, and I actually have some here, so after the presentation you're welcome to come up and see what my front yard looks like. It resembles mica when it's in red clay, but when it's heated up, it really becomes very light and porous, and it actually pops and expands to about 10 to 15 times its original size. So it starts off very flat and like layers, but then it can explode and it becomes very porous. And so another name for this, you might sometimes hear it called isinglass. They actually are slightly different, but a lot of people do call it isinglass. And they're both members of the mica family. So when you look at it, this is just this fabulous illustration, which was fascinating to me. It starts off, again, very flat, but it's layer upon layer, and you can actually peel it. But there's like water and moisture that gets trapped in there. And what happens is when it steams up, it puffs up the layer. So imagine baking a croissant, right? You've got your laminated dough, and then all of a sudden you put it in the oven, the water expands, and then you've got a croissant. It's kind of the same thing here. So it keeps it super, super light. And in 1932, so where Tigerville came into everything, in 1932, a geologist was asked to examine Tiger Baptist Church, which is the property on 414, if you're familiar with the area. They had noticed, when they were looking at some zircon that had been sent from one geologist to another, they had noticed some shiny particles on there. And they were really curious as to what it was, because it really just looks like ore or gold, and they wanted to learn a little bit more about it. What they found was that there were many parcels of land in the area, cow pastures, people's yards, lots of areas that had vermiculite in them. And so everybody said, well, what are we going to do? We're going to start mining. And so in 1937, the Poinsett Company built the first vermiculite mine and processing plant in Tigerville, and they ran it for 3 years. In 1942, Tree, which was owned by someone from Asheville, North Carolina, they established their own mine nearby on another viable property, and they operated that for several years until it burned down completely. Zonolite came in at that point, and they acquired the leases of both Poinsett and Tree in 1939. And they held on to those properties, and they actually didn't start mining until 1946 because they wanted to have a processing plant that was not at the mining site. So they built the processing plant here in Travelers Rest. So the processing plant, for those of you who don't know where it is just over on Rowford Road, right where the bike trail comes through, because that spur was part of it. So that's where the railroad came and picked everything up. They wanted to make sure that they had the ability to process and then bag and then send off the vermiculite. So due to its ability to withstand high heat and resist vermin, again, it became very sought after for many purposes, and the entire nation was clamoring for vermiculite. And what was interesting is there were 2 places that we could get really good quality vermiculite. One was Tigerville here in South Carolina, and the other was Libby, Montana. And those were the 2 most popular mines. And so we became a significant player in the mining industry, whereas we had been known for other things but not mining at that point. So it was very interesting to have a very new industry come to this part of the world. So Zonolite struck a deal with Tiger Baptist Church, and they decided, well, we're going to mine on your land, and what's it going to take to do that? And they got together with the deacons, and they wrote up a lease agreement, and they decided we will pay you 75 cents per 2,000 pounds of merchantable material as a part of the agreement. Just let us have this plot of land. And so everybody agreed, and I actually have the lease agreements here that you'll be able to see afterwards. So 75 cents in those days is about $16.50 today per 2,000 pounds. Still seems like a really cheap deal to me. I feel like they could have gotten more for it, but hey, they did what they did. And so they signed the lease. We just passed the 85th anniversary of the actual lease signing, but they didn't, again, start mining until 1946. So they really took their time to build everything out properly before they did all of this mining work. So the way that it happened is it was called like an open pit. So what they did was they really dug out a huge area of what's now my front yard, and they made it so that the top of the earth, they would have these big backhoes and shovels, and they would knock off the top of the earth, and then they would kind of sift through it, and then the vermiculite would come up, and they wouldn't ever sift more than 50, or they wouldn't dig, I should say, more than 50 feet down, because they really wanted to make sure that they were staying, as close as they could. So that's where they were bringing everything up from, a sifter, and then they would take the processing plant, or they would take the materials, put it onto a truck, and bring it to the processing plant. Originally, Zonolite did have its own temporary processing plant on site, but they really used the one in Travelers Rest much more. And mainly because to get everything processed and then bring it down to the railroad was a lot harder because the roads were not good. There was not a lot of paved roads, it was very bumpy, and it would damage the materials. So they found it was easier to bring it in its raw form, bring it here, and then process it here. And so the processing plant here in Travelers Rest, it allowed the railroad to come right up. It would process everything, put it into bags, get it on the trains, and get it out to wherever it needed to go in the U.S. It also brought a lot of jobs here to this area. So what was nice is there was a new industry, there were new jobs, the plant ran 3 shifts a day, so it was constantly in motion, whereas the mine only was in motion throughout the week, and it was 1 shift a day, and it was a very small team of people. So this really created a way for people to make income here. So the way that the processing plant was set up is the truck would come, the vermiculite would be dumped into an area, so one of these big silos like you see up on the screen, conveyor carried the vermiculite to a bin, and it held tons and tons of the ore, and so it also served as a storage area, which was really nice. So if they couldn't process right away, they were able to hold the material there. From that storage bin, the ore was carried through a giant cylinder, and then it also dried it out. So it's almost like a dehydrator and a drying process. And then from the cylinder, the ore was carried onto another storage bin. It waited for its final processing, and that's when it went into a heating chamber that was about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It expanded the ore to about 15 times its original size, and that's what made it ready to be bagged. So you can see in the picture here, it's kind of coming out the chute. That's when it was completed. And so here you can see the Zonolite vermiculite being bagged up by one of our local folks, Ezell Stiles, who worked at the plant. And that was his job, making sure that everything got bagged up and got onto the trucks. The Southern Division Manager was Joe Kelly, and he had come here, and he also wound up working in Libby, Montana for Zonolite for many, many years. But Travelers Rest actually had the largest capacity for output of all of their nationwide plants, which was something that was really something to be proud of, and still is. They processed over 1,200 bags of vermiculite every single day. That's a lot of vermiculite. What was also neat is they sent out a geologist from the University of South Carolina. His name was Otis Floyd Stewart, and he came and spent 13 weeks in the field recording what was going on at the vermiculite mine. He wrote his thesis about it, and he wound up working for Zonolite for 42 years, which was really fascinating. And I was very fortunate. The book that's on the table right here is the book that I borrowed from the library. So this came up from Columbia, where it is housed, and it is all about his findings. So it talks about the mineral components, the mine itself, what it was like to be there. There are maps and all kinds of fun things in there, and it's really like just a wealth of information. So the fact that he took so much time to write this book was really fantastic. He did pass away, sadly, about a year ago at the age of 99, bless him. But he was instrumental in making sure that the development and construction, especially out in Libby, Montana, was mirrored to what they were doing here in Tigerville because it was so successful. So this is just an example of one of the manifests and waybills that would come every month, and I have those on the table here in the envelopes. You'll be able to see those afterwards. This is how Tiger Baptist Church knew what they were getting paid for, because they got all of the royalties. So Zonolite would process and pack and mark all of this down, and they would send this incredible manifest to the church at the end of every month with a list of how many truckloads went out, how many pounds of ore went out, and how much they were going to make in royalties. So they documented everything. And here's just a few more examples of what that looked like. Just a lot of vermiculite. And it also said where it went. So what was also nice, I'll actually go back for a second, is you can see they're going to all different places. So some of these went local, some of these went further. And you'll see as we go through that there's no place in the nation that the vermiculite didn't reach. So that's kind of fascinating that it all came out of that one small plot of land. This again is a truck weight. So this is the manifest for the truck weights. And it just tells how many trucks went, how much they weighed. They were very, very meticulous about the recording of everything. Here's a copy of one of the letters that would go with the check every month. So Mr. Kelly would write up a letter, like basically saying, here's how we did this month, here's what I'm sending to you, please see the enclosed, and here's your royalty check. And every single month for 18 months, the church did get a royalty check, and that was how long they mined on that property. And here's a copy of the check stub. So
How much is that?
that's $860 in 1946 numbers. So Zonolite continued to operate out of Tigerville. They had a few additional arrangements, so they couldn't work on Sundays, so that was actually like an extra little side thing, no operating on Sundays. And they also needed to create an easement for the roadway there, because there were not a lot of paved roads and their trucks were taking up a lot of the space that needed to happen for the regular folks who were living in the area. So they created a road so that the trucks could come in and out. And that was something that they worked on, and every single thing had a letter behind it. It's fascinating. In early 1948, the Zonolite company changed their name from Universal Zonolite Insulation Company, which is a mouthful, to Zonolite, and that's how they were known. Today they are known as W.R. Grace. So Zonolite found some other areas of land where they were able to start digging. They found vermiculite in other areas, especially in Lawrence and Spartanburg counties, so they opened up some mining operations out there. They found the one in Lawrence County to really be more viable, and they ceased operations in Tigerville in March of 1948. So they really only mined there for just under 2 years. And the total royalties paid just in Tigerville were over $18,000 to the church. And in today's money, that would be $395,000 for about a year and a half's worth of work. So not bad. And so they did a final payment at the end when they were completely done pulling up all of their machinery. And that's about $6,500 by today's money. They gave that money to the church for the remaining stockpile of dust, which I can assure you is still there, and removing obligation from Zonolite in the future for any further cleanup. And they did continue operating in other areas, including Lawrence County. What was really nice about this is, thanks to the royalties, Tiger Baptist Church was able to be completely remodeled. And they did use all of that money to remodel their church, which is the beautiful building that you see today. They had a dedication ceremony in September of 1948. And these are just some articles and advertisements for Zonolite. It was really known as like a miracle solution for building and gardeners. That's really how people were touting it in those days. The nice thing is that the Travelers Rest plant that was here stayed in operation for many, many years once the vermiculite was not being mined up in Tigerville anymore. So there was still a lot of work happening to support that business and keeping jobs here. Here is a newsletter that Zonolite sent out to their employees. So you can see Mr. Kelly in the top right. They sent this out on a quarterly basis. So this is just how you could keep up with what was going on and where things were happening. And again, this was long after they stopped mining up in Tigerville, but they still operated out of Travelers Rest here. And here's a few more articles and pictures of the plant. And so Zonolite was continuing to operate until 2001, when that plant over on Roford Road closed for good. The property site was about 41 acres, and there were two main building structures with a handful in between. The railroad spur kind of ran right between them. And so right now, if you go over there, it's an empty plot of land, but the Swamp Rabbit Trail goes through. So now you can go visit the site if you'd like to, as part of the trail. Once the land closed, once the mine closed, the land was actually just filled back in, so Zonolite did take care of that. The abandoned site just remained vacant for about 40 years. Trees, brush, everything else grew up around it. The kids would ride their bikes because there was a big concrete structure pillar that was left on the site that they couldn't take down. And so kids would go and climb it and just kind of play on it all day. And in the late 1980s, the land was purchased privately to become a family property, and it left that concrete structure right there in the middle of the front yard, and it still remains there. And so it's privately owned, not by the original folks who bought it, but it's privately owned, and the house sits a little bit back from the property, and people really slow down to look at that thing because they can't figure out what is in your front yard. It's fascinating. But that's what's in our front yard. And there's still vermiculite all over the ground, so it's really interesting, especially after it rains, to look outside and it looks like our yard is paved in gold. It just glitters constantly. In September 2023, so last September, a ceremony was hosted by the Blue Ridge History Lions Club, and it took place at the Tigerville site to dedicate a plaque to the remaining slab. local author Geraldine Epley, who wrote a book about Tigerville, which there is a whole section, a whole chapter 10 in her book, is all about the vermiculite mine. She was on hand to speak. Drew Hines also was on hand to speak. And Don Corbin, who recently passed away, he came up and shared stories about his dad working at the mine and coming down from North Carolina and starting his family here because he wanted to work at the mine. So it was just such a delight to get to meet him and hear his personal story about that. I'm very sad that he's no longer here. And so the Google map will show you, if you ever do want to come visit, please come knock on the door. My husband or I are almost always home, and we'll be happy to kind of show you around. But now that we have the plaque on that, people do stop and they kind of look at it and they go, oh, that's really neat. So we added a little Google map, so if you ever want to come by, please feel free, come see it. Come walk around. It still has some rebar sticking out of it. Just be careful, because you never know what else is in the ground over there. But yes, please come by. And so with that, I know that was a little bit, just a nice, getting to the surface of it. I know there are more stories out there. I know that people know people who either worked there or have some association with the mine. And my ask is, if you know anyone who worked there, or know any stories, or have any artifacts, or pictures, or anything at all, if you could please get them to us at the Historical Society, because we would really love to continue building on this story. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I will do my best to answer them. Yes?
Is the water chemically attached to the mica surface?
It's, God, that is a good question. I should probably read that book a little bit more. I know that it's in there.
Is it insulation?
Yeah, I know that it's in there, and how it's in there, I don't know, because it just says it's like in the layers, there is moisture in the layers. So it seems like it would be in there.
Layers,
yeah.
It's not chemically
in it. Not in, it's not in the ore, it's in between the layers.
So it's got soaked in there, it wasn't chemical actually contained.
And there's asbestos in there too.
Okay.
As a child, I got permission to go to the Zonolite plant. I was interested in geology, and I could go and get all the samples I wanted, and I was having fun. Came back many, many times. They were using it for insulation. And I asked the guys, how is mica used as insulation? Because it's an electrical insulator, as you said. So they explained that the asbestos is in there, and they grind it up, and that's the insulation. And so when I found out it's full of asbestos, my interest in playing there sort of went away.
Great question. Thank you so much.
So is it really mica and vermiculite are just totally different things? Because I remember hiking around, seeing all the little shiny bits on the ground. I always thought it was just mica, but maybe it was.
Vermiculite is a form of mica, so there are other forms of mica as well, and it's one of those you kind of have to look at it closely to see what the properties of it are to know which one it is.
Like a really small shiny, it might be more like in the big plate of it.
Yeah, I have both up here.
Okay.
So yeah, I have the sheets, and then I also have the dust. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Please feel free, come up, take a look at anything that's on the tables. I'm happy to answer more questions if you have any.
Are those books for sale?
Yes. Yes, so Geraldine, who as it turns out couldn't be here tonight, but she did write this book about Tigerville. We sell these at the museum, but we did bring them with us tonight, so you can purchase them here. And they're 15? Right, yeah, 15, thank you. Yeah, $15.
Thank you everyone for coming out, and please come up and take a look.